Boss says I should quit because I like spending time on hobbies, so I did. I was working for a startup engineering firm working as a piping design engineer. But since it was a startup firm, we didn't have a lot of manpower and the ones we had weren't as qualified either. I was one of the very few qualified enough to handle a team of my own. The boss trusted me with almost everything. I was like the second in command after the boss only because I was managing a lot of things on the side as a voluntary basis. Things like paycheck balancing, client meetings, quality assurance, documentation, and other stuff which he should have hired someone else to do. I was good at it and he took full advantage of it by giving me things to do that never was under my job description. One day he had this bright idea that we should revamp our website to attract more clients. And he gave this project to his nephew who just graduated from college as a developer of sorts. After a week or so the nephew came up with the first draft of the website and the boss was fairly disappointed as it didn't look anywhere near to what he expected. He then called me in and asked me if I knew anything about website design. At that time I was very much interested on UI/UX and was doing an online course to learn about it more. So I told him that I'll see what I can do. I spent the next week full making a proper information architecture, wireframes and color guidelines that the nephew could pick up and build the website from scratch. In the end the website looked futuristic and the boss was pretty happy. But during the week my other responsibilities were put in a backlog and it just kept piling on. I knew I would be able to cover it once I'm done with the website and didn't pay too much attention to it. The next week my boss caught up with backlog and called me into his cabin. He started yelling at me for all the responsibilities that I didn't attend to. I calmly told him that I was working on the website and it's not a big deal. Told him that I would clear it out as soon as possible. But he wasn't happy. He asked me why I spent so much time doing something that isn't even my responsibility. I told him that I was learning about UI/UX and was pretty much interested to learn more. I obviously never thought about pursuing it as a career because frankly I was a mechanical engineer by qualification and didn't think jumping to IT would be easy. The boss snapped and told me that I should quit and purr away my hobby as a living. He said that only then I will understand how lucky I am to have a job that pays. I kind of got offended because 1. He doesn't even pay me the worth of things I do for the company and 2. He knew I could cover and yet took this as an opportunity to discipline me. I stepped out of this cabin, went to my desk and put in my resignation and went home. He called me a couple of times, asked me to revoke my resignation and then made other people from the organization call me to convince me to come back. I wasn't having it at all. It's been 2 years now. I decided to pursue UI/UX as a career now and am working as a product designer in one of the biggest organizations in the country with a pay that's almost 300% more than what I was getting as a mechanical engineer.
My husband got jealous over the girl he led on for years at our wedding. I 25F got married to my husband 24 meters, we'll call him Jim, a week ago after dating for 2.5 years. Jim has a friend called Misha 22F who was invited to the wedding. He and Misha have known each other since high school and were close friends, and Misha had a very obvious crush on Jim from what he and others who know them have told me. Jim told me this after I met Misha for the first time and confessed that he leaned into her crush and led her on throughout their high school years and for a little while after, before we got together, because he was struggling with his mental health and he really liked her attention. He seemed genuinely guilty about all of that because he thought Misha was a nice girl and a good friend, and because he showed guilt I didn't feel the need to bring it up or argue about it despite thinking it was a shitty thing to do. Plus, Misha is a nice girl who has never overstepped boundaries and has been nothing but kind and friendly towards me, and I now consider her a friend too. Misha moved away to the city last year and has done really well for herself and has a long-term boyfriend who none of us have met yet. So when it came to sending wedding invites, I told her she was welcome to bring him as her +1. The first red flag came when Jim was weirdly resistant to the idea of Misha bringing her boyfriend, but he excused it on being concerned about the number of guests we invited and the matter was dropped. When the wedding day came, Misha showed up in this beautiful dress, nothing inappropriate for a wedding, and with her boyfriend on her arm, who I'll admit is a very handsome guy, think a Kit Harington type. She's also lost weight and has a haircut that suits her better, and I thought she looked great. We also found out throughout the night that her boyfriend is very successful and earns more than practically anyone else who attended. Throughout the reception I noticed Jim glaring at Misha and her boyfriend the whole time, and he was really cold and short towards her when she came over to congratulate us and give us a gift. He was also straight up kinda rude to her boyfriend when Misha introduced us to him. When his mom, who's always known and liked Misha, mentioned that she was glad Misha found a great guy and praised her boyfriend for being so nice, Jim snapped that at least she won't be desperate and hung up on me for the rest of her life, which I thought was cruel and uncalled for. But I didn't challenge him because I didn't want to argue at my wedding, despite the fact that he frankly sounded bitter. The whole thing has left an awful taste in my mouth, and I can't help but think that Jim got jealous that Misha has found a guy who's honestly quite a catch, who she's clearly very in love with and is now completely over Jim. What are some subtle signs of depression that most people ignore? Their house is a mess. Their car is a mess. They procrastinate anything small or major. They avoid even minorly unpleasant scenarios. They lack a routine. Their diet is poor and they either eat too much or not enough. They overindulge in video games or streaming or similar activities to escape reality. They neglect their responsibilities and loved ones, often slowly and unknowingly. They suffer from a memory deficit. They suffer from fatigue. They lack motivation. They sleep too much yet struggle to fall asleep. What is the funniest interruption you've had during spicy time? Cold nose of a golden retriever in my butt.
Getting mighty close to organism and the dude stops because he heard the call to prayer from a nearby mosque. Was mid having spicy time and my dad, who is blind, walks in, not realizing what we were doing and immediately starts complaining about Boris Johnson.
Doing my girlfriend doggy style on the bed. I suddenly stopped and asking, how the hell are you licking my balls? Yeah, my dog jumped on the bed and started to lick my balls. Her drunk friend kept coming into the room and interrupting. The third time I said I'm not stopping, so the drunk friend climbed on my back while I pounded away. My roommate with the weirdest goddamn laugh. Was like an inhale hua. We were in my bedroom downstairs and he was upstairs. We couldn't continue on after that. Laughed our asses off. Our cat knocking almost everything off the counter in the kitchen. Was eating my girl out and she farted. Having spicy time in my college dorm room. Had come back late and roommate was in his bed on other side of room but thought we could be quiet. Didn't work out. Girl was loud. Get so far and she yells, I'm coming, I'm coming, I'm coming. And my roommate hops out of bed and says, I'm going, I'm going, I'm going, and walks out. He saw the funny side as well, happily, so no bad feelings. Bold of you to assume I have had spicy time.
My son told me what my husband does when I'm not home. Hank, can you run down to the basement and fetch me some more flour? I asked my son, who had just come downstairs for breakfast. He plopped down onto one of the kitchen chairs and shook his little head. No, he muttered, I can't. I craned my neck to look at him from the pancake mix bubbling on the stove. He seemed fidgety and pale, not at all like his usual self. Why not? He stared at me, his eyes wide. There are ghosts in the basement, Mom. Oh, don't be silly, I chuckled. Ghosts aren't real, sweetheart. Or even if they are, they live in very old, abandoned houses. Much older than ours. Hank was silent, watching me as I poked at the batter in the pan. That's not true, is it? His voice was earnest and eerily calm, sending chills crawling up my spine. Of course, it's true. I assured him, think about it. What is a ghost? Hank thought for a moment. Someone who's dead? I nodded, exactly. And no one has died in our house. We bought it brand new last year, remember? So, we can't have ghosts. How do you know? My heart skipped a beat and I turned to look at him again. For a 7-year-old, Hank was an incredibly deep thinker, a quality that had the capacity both to impress and to unnerve. How do I know what? How do you know that no one has died in our house? I tapped the spatula on the edge of the pan, trying to gather my scattered thoughts. Well, wouldn't we know if anyone had? Hey, darling, could you run down and get that flour, please? These pancakes are breaking apart. There was a pause. No, Mom. I sighed impatiently. Hank, your dad's downstairs. The lights will be on. Go on, there's no ghost, trust me. But Hank sat there, kicking his legs under the table, visibly uncomfortable. This had never been a problem in the past, and I couldn't think of any reason for it, aside from some silly horror story his friends might have told him at school. Look, how about I call Dad to come get you, I said, making my way towards the basement door, though. No, Mom, don't. Hank jumped to his feet, dashing after me and gripping the hem of my apron. Don't call Dad. Why? His eyes welled up with tears. I don't like him. I stared at him, taken aback. You don't like him? Why? He's a bad person. What? How can you say such a thing? He stuck out his bottom lip. He's very angry. He's not angry, sweetheart. What makes you say that? Well, Hank sounded hesitant. Yesterday, after school, I went down to the basement to ask for some help with the pasta, and he was yelling at the lady. And then he hit her. I froze. What pasta?
My daughter made me cry for the first time in my life. I, 28F, have a 13-year-old daughter. I hit her when I was 15, after I was raped by someone who I thought was my friend. Daughter doesn't know this. I decided not to tell her. Keep it in mind. Well, I also have a sister, 35F. She's honestly the best sister I could ever ask for. Now for explanation. I was picking my daughter up from school, and she seemed like she was in a bad mood, so I wanted to do something that would cheer her up. I asked her if she wanted to go to the mall or go out to the Chinese restaurant she loves. She told me no, because my sister had promised to take her to the movies, so I told her I'd drive her to the movies. She then told me no again and to drop her off at my sister's house, so I agreed. 3 hours later she came home. She was happier now. I asked if the movies were fun, but she just ignored me, and went to her room instead. I thought this was weird, because she normally always tells me how fun the movies are, or whenever she goes somewhere with my sister. So I called her down for dinner. She came down, and walked right past me to grab her jacket and shoes, obviously confused. I asked her where she was going. She said she was going to get Mexican food with my sister. We're Hispanic and I had already prepared some pastelitos salvadoreños. I told her I had already made dinner, and she got mad, and told me to leave her alone, because she didn't want to eat something a dirty slut made. I asked her what she meant by that, and she said I was gross for losing my virginity at such a young age, and that she was grossed out even looking at me. She called me a disgusting whore, and slammed the door and left. This honestly broke my heart, since I had gone to therapy for so long to try and cope with what happened, but as a result my own daughter basically slut-shamed me for having my innocence taken away. I honestly just lost my appetite, and just went to my room. I have been crying ever since. My heart honestly just completely feels sad. I think my sister told her, because I planned on telling her until she was older. I feel betrayed, and hurt and don't know what to do. She knocked on my room door, but I didn't open it. I mean, how do I even approach this? Also, thank you for reading this. I needed to vent.
Every time I think of eliminating myself, I don't, because I want to see the end of One Piece. I wish this was a joke, but it's not. I'm 31. I've been reading One Piece for more than a decade. My late father used to read it to me as a kid. My life has been hellish for a while. I have a very painful condition that is only getting worse. I am also very alone due to various reasons. But I don't want to pass before I read the end of One Piece. Last winter I had a plan laid out and everything, and I thought to myself I should at least wait a little. This thought made me laugh and I didn't do it. Lately I found myself leaving the hospital and someone had to drive me home because of the medicine. But I had no one to call and I can't drive. So I had to pay for a taxi. When I got home I felt so alone and sad. I thought of eliminating myself in my bathtub, but then again, I was like, I have to know what the One Piece is. Hopefully by the time One Piece ends I'll be doing better. Maybe my condition will be stabilized. I don't want to pass before the end of One Piece.
What's your most shameful NSFW moment? When I was 17 or something I was watching porn in the middle of the night. After I did my deed I felt a slight pain in my balls, like someone flicked their finger on them. The pain increased to the point that I had to walk it out. After some minutes I began screaming from the pain when my parents came to my room seeing me in pain on the floor. At that moment I thought I did something wrong while masturbating but was too ashamed to tell them. My dad rushed me to the emergency room where I was rushed in and my pants were removed. Laying there dick out they gave me a nose spray which halted some of the pain. The doctor then started fondling my balls while the nurse stood next to me reminding me to breathe because the nose spray stopped the automatic breathing, if that makes sense. All the time my dad is standing there looking and the only thing I could think at that moment was, oh no, do they think my dick is small? After that the doctors brought me to another room while my dad was in another room. While going through the halls I told the doctor I probably know the cause and explained that I was masturbating. I don't remember the doctor's response but I felt truly ashamed, like I was the only person doing such a thing. Later the doctor told me I had testicular torsion which is caused by the balls not being attached to the sac, so I'm living in fear of it happening again to this day.
My son refuses to let me inspect his private area. What should I do? I'm female 49, am a mother to 2 teenage boys aged 14 and 17. My 14-year-old son is fine but my 17-year-old son is not. At the moment, he refuses to show me his private area. I am a cashier at a grocery store and a single mom. I want to make sure my sons are healthy because I cannot afford emergency trips. I take them yearly to doctors and dentists. I always keep them clean and healthy. But lately my son refuses to cooperate. Every 5 months I check my son's private areas. I squeeze and pull and make sure everything is in tip-top health. The other day was the day I told my sons I would be doing this inspection after dinner. My 14-year-old complied happily and even said I massaged it perfectly. My 17-year-old son was furious. He locked himself in his room the rest of the day. I waited until the next day to speak to him when he came out to go to school. I ambushed him. I tried to explain to him my reasoning as to why I do these inspections but he refused to hear it. He screamed at me and pushed me aside, shouting it was his private area, his private business. I thought that statement was bull poop. I am thinking I may ambush him at night and check it then. My son is a heavy sleeper. Either that or I will put him to sleep with sleeping pills and check. I do not understand what is going on with him. I simply want a healthy son. What should I do? Update. Hello everyone, I am unsure why I received so much hate. I would like to update on the situation. I spoke to my son and tried to ask him what was wrong and why he refused to cooperate. He didn't answer, so I took his electronics and his privileges away. He still would not cooperate. Because of this I had no other option. I slipped his sleeping pills into his dinner in a crush form, very disguised. I made soup so it would work much easier. He ate and instantly became sleepy. He went to bed 3 hours early. I took my chance. I allowed his 14-year-old brother to assist me by getting him to help me unzip my son's pants and pull out mini him. I began inspecting it and even allowed my youngest to try inspecting it too. My youngest pulled and played with it happily. But then when I checked under, I saw lots of horrible red icky blisters. It made me gag and my 14-year-old instantly backed away. We will be taking my son to the doctor tomorrow. My son does not know that I know about his problem. He believes I am doing this because I am getting him inspected by a professional since he isn't complying with me. Should I update? I am doing the right thing. I can't believe my son never told me he was dealing with this problem.
Found out my husband was in love with his friend, so I made her my best friend, and now he is no one. All ages are at the time it happened. My F27 husband, M30, of 5 years Steve, had a female best friend long before we met. We will call her Amy. I met Amy pretty early on in the relationship, and I thought the girl best friend thing was kind of weird, but she seemed cool. I wasn't interested in a friendship between her and I, but I figured we could be civil. Steve had other friends but more, text every now and then friends. Amy was the only one he saw in person often. She even included me on activities occasionally, movie nights at her house or trips to the park, etc. I felt more secure because of how kind she was. The security washed down the drain every time it sprung up though. Steve always looked at Amy in a way he never looked at me. He seemed so genuine happy when she talked, more animated and excited, etc. He also tried to get me to cut my hair to be more like hers at one point and dye it a natural color. Amy had shoulder-length brown hair, beautiful on her but not the look for me. I had longish hair that I frequently dyed fun colors. He also would drop plans with me at the drop of the hat if the opportunity to spend time with Amy came up. Not every time, but one that stands out from memory is we were about to take a trip to visit my family. A full day trip if we don't stop anywhere on the way, and before we left he texted Amy to see what she was doing that day. She said nothing and he insisted we stop by to see her before we go. Amy did not know our plans. We ended up spending the whole day there. I rescheduled my family visit. If I had been more vocal at the time maybe it would have been different. But I didn't, and still don't, like arguing in front of people and bringing it up in front of Amy felt mortifying at the time. I chalked it up to me being too self-conscious and over-worrying. Steve wasn't outright cruel to me or anything, but the little things and comments tore me down. This went on for our whole marriage. One night Steve and I were drinking at home and watching bad Christmas movies, The Ginger Dead Man and such. I got in my feelings out of nowhere, as I often do when drunk, and asked him if he ever had feelings for Amy. He admitted to it, said he tried to get her to be with him multiple times since middle school and she always rejected him. I asked if she wanted to be together if he would want to be with her instead of me. He said something along the lines of, "Stop making up hypothetical questions like that, that'll just hurt your feelings." I cried. We fought. I told him to leave. He called Amy and asked her to pick him up. When she got there I, drunk as a skunk, went outside and, in a not friendly way, accused her of ruining my marriage knowingly. There was a three-way heated argument, that I'm fuzzy on details, of because A, I was drunk, B, even sober when I'm in a heated argument I tend to erase things, and C, this didn't exactly happen yesterday. At the end of it Amy ended up taking Steve to his mom's house. She came back to me sitting in the yard crying. This is already too long so I'll skip ahead a bit. Amy knew vaguely that Steve had feelings for her, but thought it was a weird crush that would go away. She liked me but thought I was cold so didn't try to force a friendship. She didn't know a lot of the stuff Steve had said to me as far as comparing me to her, and was pissed about it when she learned. She let him know that she wasn't and never would be interested in him romantically. He said he understood. Steve and I did a temporary separation that led to divorce. Amy and I became friends. She was and is a great friend to me, almost worth everything Steve put me through. She's the sister I never had. She is still friends with Steve, but in the text every now and then way. I'm more self-confident now, no real long-term relationships since the Big D. But now I'm invited to every movie night and trivia game and camping trip with Amy so I'm not at all bothered by the lack of romantic partner. Sorry this was so long. A little rushed at the end because I realized it was getting book length. Thanks for reading if you did. If you're married to a Steve there are better things out there for you darling.